Well done, Lewis. I mean, given how you started Q3, is it pretty satisfying to turn it around the way you did?
Yeah. I think very, very close between everybody. If you can see those small margins, I think we've done a really good job over the weekend. The team did such a great job to bring upgrades this weekend. The engine. Yesterday we were quite far off. We didn't really understand why, but made some changes to the car and we closed that gap. Unfortunately, my Q311 wasn't spot on, wasn't spectacular with two mistakes. Well, the mistake in turn 3, but it kind of didn't feel great already from turn 1. And so I had a lot to recover with that one lap at the end, which makes it really much harder when you don't have a banker in. But but it's great to be up there with Charles. And it's a long way to turn 3, so hopefully we're in a good fight.
Yeah, I mean, as you start alongside the young man you're chasing in title terms, you can fight for the win tomorrow, do you sense?
I think out of pure pace, no. The Mercedes have been just very, very quick this weekend. You know, as I said yesterday, it was 6 tenths, so I think in pure pace it would be very, very hard to do. But maybe with strategy, maybe there's an opportunity. But I think it's a tall order to try and win tomorrow. I think tomorrow we got to maximise points for the team. Obviously, try and keep one of the Mercedes behind if we can.
Ferrari's engineers were not shocked because Leclerc and Hamilton were fast. They were shocked because 24 hours earlier that lap time looked impossible. On Friday, the SF26 was sliding, locking, and losing more than half a second to Mercedes. Austria was supposed to expose Ferrari's weakest point. Long straights, brutal acceleration, no hiding place. Then qualifying arrived. Hamilton lit up the middle sector. Leclerc crossed the line. And suddenly, the same Ferrari garage that had been searching for answers was staring at two red cars fighting at the very front. But here is the detail that makes this dangerous. Ferrari had called their new engine update minor. The stopwatch told a completely different story. Because if a so-called minor upgrade can take Ferrari from half a second behind to threatening Mercedes in Austria, then the real question is not how Leclerc and Hamilton found that lap. The real question is what Ferrari has just unlocked, and why even their own engineers did not see it coming. Subscribe to the channel. Austria was supposed to expose Ferrari. That was the quiet expectation before the weekend began. Not because Ferrari had a bad car. Not because Leclerc and Hamilton lacked speed. And not because the team had stopped improving. The danger was more specific than that. The Red Bull Ring is short, fast, and brutally honest. It does not give a team many places to hide. If the engine is weak, the straights reveal it. If the tires are outside their window, the lap time disappears. If the driver cannot trust the rear of the car, every exit becomes a lost opportunity. And for Ferrari, that mattered because the biggest question around the SF26 had never been whether it could corner. It could. The real question was whether it could survive a circuit where power mattered this much. On Friday, the answer looked uncomfortable. The Ferrari garage was not seeing the kind of numbers that create confidence. The car was moving around too much. Leclerc was asking for more grip. Hamilton was dealing with a locking sensation that made the car harder to trust under braking. And Mercedes looked exactly how Ferrari feared they would look. Clean, stable, fast. That is the kind of Friday that changes the atmosphere inside a garage. Outside, people see a timing sheet and move on. Inside, engineers start searching for patterns. They look at tire temperatures. They look at balance through corner entry. They look at how early the driver can apply throttle. They compare sectors. They compare the first lap on the tire against the second. They ask whether the problem is mechanical, aerodynamic, or simply the wrong operating window. Because in Formula 1, being slow is rarely one problem. It is usually 5 small problems hiding inside one big lap time. And that is what made Ferrari's Friday so worrying. The gap to Mercedes was not just a few hundredths. It was more than half a second in qualifying conditions. On a long circuit, that might still leave room for interpretation. But Austria is short. A gap like that at the Red Bull Ring feels louder because there are fewer corners and fewer seconds to recover. It suggested that Ferrari was not simply missing polish. It suggested they were missing a breakthrough. But here is where the story begins to twist. Ferrari had brought that breakthrough with them. They just did not know yet how much it would give. The new ADUO engine update had arrived in Austria under careful language. Ferrari did not present it as a revolution. They did not want headlines promising domination. They did not want to put extra pressure on Hamilton, Leclerc, or the engine department. So they called it a smaller step, a controlled improvement, a development moving from the factory to the track. But Formula One teams know something fans sometimes forget. A small step in public can be a much bigger question in private, because the new Ferrari power unit was not just about adding a little speed on the straights. It was built around a more aggressive idea. More heat, more pressure, more efficiency. Ferrari was trying to make the engine work harder in the exact areas where it had been losing ground. Think of it like turning up the temperature in a kitchen. You can cook faster. You can get a sharper result. But if the pan is not strong enough or the timing is wrong, everything can burn. That was Ferrari's risk. The update was designed to survive a harsher environment inside the engine. Stronger materials around the engine head. A hotter operating concept. A new shell fuel mixture created to work with those conditions. All of it pointed toward the same goal. Ferrari wanted to close the power gap without destroying the strengths of the car. That is much harder than it sounds. Because in Formula One, car is not a collection of separate parts. It is a living system. Change the engine behavior and you may affect cooling. Change cooling and you may affect aerodynamics. Change aerodynamics and you may affect balance. Change balance and suddenly the driver cannot use the tires properly. One improvement can create 3 new problems. That is why Friday mattered. Ferrari had the new weapon, but the weapon had not yet fully connected with the car. Leclerc did not sound like a driver sitting on a hidden masterpiece. He sounded like a driver fighting for grip. Hamilton did not sound like a man ready to shock Mercedes. He sounded like a driver trying to understand why the car was not behaving under braking. And yet, inside that difficult Friday there were clues. Not obvious clues. Not the kind fans notice immediately. The kind engineers notice when they look deeper than the headline time. A sector that was not terrible. A traction phase that improved on a later run. A tire temperature that started to move toward the right range. A power delivery map that looked more promising once the car was adjusted. Small signs that the performance might be trapped, not missing. That difference is everything. If performance is missing, you need a new car. If performance is trapped, you need the right key. Ferrari spent the night looking for that key. And this is where the human side of Formula One gets underestimated. Hamilton's victory had raised the stakes inside Ferrari. Not publicly in a dramatic way, but quietly where it matters most. In the comparisons, in the strategy discussions, in the championship conversations that nobody wants to start too early, but everybody knows are coming. Leclerc needed a clean session. Not just for points, for authority. He had to remind Ferrari that when the car gives him a chance, he can still deliver the lap that changes the weekend. So when qualifying began, the Ferrari story was already loaded with tension. A new engine update that might be stronger than advertised. A Friday that looked almost too poor to recover from. A Saturday morning that reopened the door. Hamilton carrying fresh momentum. Leclerc carrying internal pressure. Mercedes still standing in the way. And a circuit that would punish Ferrari if any part of the puzzle was false. That is why what happened in Q3 felt so explosive. Because Ferrari were not simply trying to improve. They were trying to prove that Friday had lied. And for most teams, proving that in Austria would already be difficult. But Ferrari did something more shocking. They did not just recover. They attacked the front. That is the moment the engineers were not fully prepared for. Because improvement is one thing. A direct threat to Mercedes at the Red Bull Ring is another. And as Hamilton rolled into his lap, the first signs appeared. The car was no longer sliding like a machine searching for grip. It looked sharper, more connected, more willing to change direction. The kind of car that lets a driver take liberties instead of asking for compromises. Then the sector time appeared. Hamilton had gone purple in the middle part of the lap. That was the first real shockwave. Inside Ferrari, engineers knew what that meant. The middle sector was not just a power number. It was a trust number. It showed the car was giving Hamilton the confidence to carry speed through the section where balance matters, where tire grip matters, where a driver can lose everything with one nervous correction. A purple sector there did not happen by accident. It meant the car was alive. And before the garage could fully process that, Leclerc arrived. His lap put Ferrari at the top. And suddenly the whole weekend had turned upside down. The team that looked exposed on Friday had become the team forcing Mercedes to answer. The car that looked half a second away had found the kind of time that makes engineers look twice at their own screens. And this is the key. Ferrari's engineers were not shocked because they doubted their drivers. They were shocked because the car had changed faster than the weekend narrative could keep up. The lap time was not just a result. It was proof that the hidden performance had been real. The overnight work had unlocked it. The new power unit had supported it. The tires had entered the right window. Hamilton and Leclerc had delivered when the car finally gave them something worth attacking with. For a few seconds, Ferrari had the kind of evidence every team dreams about. Not hope, not theory, not a future promise. Evidence on the timing screen. And that evidence said something Mercedes did not want to hear. Ferrari's weakness was no longer as weak as it had been. That is why Austria became bigger than one qualifying session. Because if Ferrari could threaten Mercedes here at a circuit that should have tested their power unit brutally, then the rest of the season suddenly looked different. Tracks that had seemed dangerous could become possible. Races that looked like damage limitation could become attacks. Hamilton's title hopes could become more than a distant conversation. Leclerc's fight inside Ferrari could become sharper. And the ADUO update, the so-called minor step, could become the first sign that Maranello had found a path back into the championship. But the engineers could not celebrate too early. Because in Formula One, the stopwatch gives answers, then immediately creates new questions. Was this performance repeatable? Could the engine survive race conditions? Was the gain coming mostly from the power unit or from the tire window? Had Ferrari found a real breakthrough or a perfect lap at the perfect moment? Those questions were still hanging in the garage. And then, just as Ferrari were staring at the answer they had waited for all season, Verstappen crashed, the yellow flags came out, Russell completed his lap, and the story changed again.